What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 11 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. I'm your host, Zach Malamud. Excited to be joined again by Josh Mallett. Josh, how are we feeling today?
We're feeling really good. The Yankees are rolling. What a time in New York sports. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And let's start right there. You went to game one here in New York. I went to game one. You went to game two here in New York. Switched it around there. But we have to start with the New York Yankees as they take a 2-0 series lead now in the ALCS against the Cleveland Guardians. And Josh, let's just talk about the overview of both games in this series so far. The Yankees grab a big win on Monday night, a 5-2 win in the end in game one. And then you look to game two, and it's a 6-3 Yankees win in the end. And the Yankees' ability to put up runs right now while not playing their best kind of baseball. I mean, we've seen some bloopers to say from Cleveland so far in this series, and that's given the Yankees a bit of an advantage. But in the end, what the Yankees can control has been their pitching, and that has been lights out throughout this series, even when it got a little bit iffy yesterday with Garrett Cole, who struggled a bit on the mound to with his command overall and kind of got away from where he's been successful. Just didn't have his best stuff. Only went 4 1/3 with 6 hits allowed, 2 earned runs, 4 walks, 4 strikeouts. But he said it himself after the game. It's just bend, don't break, and really don't give the opponent anything to really feed on. Obviously, it ended up only being a 2-run inning, that 5th inning that Cleveland started to rally. But like I said, the Yankees have not played their best game just yet and still are just 2 games away from the World Series. Unbelievable to say that right now.
Right, yeah. We haven't seen the Yankees really fully click on offense. I mean, the Yankees, it's very rare that you'll see a team win 5 out of their first 6 postseason games, and you still say they really haven't been playing their best baseball and they really haven't gotten it going yet. I mean, they went 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position in game 1 of the series, and then 2 for 10 last night in game 2. The Yankees really have not been hitting and getting that timely hit all that often with runners in scoring position. I was joking around with my dad when we were at the game last night, saying that the Yankees are more effective and they have more of a chance to score runs when there's either nobody on base or if there's just a man on first. And they got a couple of big hits to score runs or driving runs when there was just a man on first. So the runners, the timely hitting with runners in scoring position still has not been there. The Yankees have been fortunate with some Cleveland miscues. You had the wild pitch fiasco in game 1 where they scored 2 runs with the bases loaded. They've had several walks, and you give the Yankees credit for the walks that they've drawn because they've had a lot of guys with quality long at bats where they draw a walk, and the Yankees are generating a lot of traffic on the bases. So you give them credit there. And then obviously you had the miscue in the first inning that kind of set the tone and got the game started for the Yankees in game 2 right off the bat with the missed pop-up by the shortstop Rocchio. So the Yankees have gotten very fortunate with some Cleveland miscues, and Cleveland's normally a team that's known for their defense and being sure-handed and playing fundamentally sound baseball. So it's really uncharacteristic of them to be gifting the Yankees these runs like this. But if you're the Yankees, you take it however you can get it, and they're getting lucky. But you can't help but think as a Yankee fan and somebody who watches this team on a day-to-day basis that scoring runs strictly off these mistakes isn't sustainable and isn't going to last. And sooner or later, the Yankees offense is going to have to break out and figure out a way to get that big blow that the fans seem to be itching for. Like, I don't know what the energy was like in game 1, but especially in game 2 when the Yankees, it seems like every inning had multiple runners on base and multiple runners in scoring position, the crowd is just itching for that big, 2-run single, that big bases clearing double to just explode and wait for that big blow off the bat to really put the Guardians away. And even though the Yankees have won 5 of their first 6 playoff games, all the games have been close and they've kept the other team in it. They really haven't been able to bury the opposing team and really end the game, really kind of end the game and kind of generate that breathing room and kind of make it a blowout and make it a laugher. So the Yankees have really been letting their opponents kind of hang in there. They're kind of waiting for the offense to get going and get that knockout punch. But obviously, the pitching has been absolutely immaculate. Obviously, Garrett Cole didn't have his best stuff yesterday, gutted it out for as long as he could. But what else can you say about the bullpen? I mean, the quartet of Tim Hill, Clay Holmes, Tommy Canley and Luke Weaver have been pretty much untouchable and automatic for the Yankees all postseason, and that's a pretty good formula to win when you have as good a starting pitching and as good a bullpen as the Yankees have had. But you can't help but think that eventually there's going to be a game where the pitching staff gives up runs, and when that happens, the offense is going to have to be ready to respond and start hitting with runners in scoring position because they've been so fortunate with the way that they've scored their runs and with how dominant their pitching has been that the offense has not even gotten going yet, and they're up 2-0 in the championship series and in the driver's seat to go to the World Series. So we'll see how it plays out, but obviously lots of good things if you're a Yankee fan, you're watching the Yankees, and a win is a win, right? They all count the same whether you win 15-1 or you win like the Yankees did 5-2 or 6-3, but we still have not seen the Yankees kind of break out and play their best brand of baseball, and we'll look to see if they can do more of that, and if the offense kind of gets going a little bit more on the road in Cleveland.
Yeah, and just quickly to touch up on this and finish things off here, talking about this offense and I think in the last couple of games, maybe some good signs you would say. Of course, the fact that Juan Soto, Giancarlo Stanton, and Aaron Judge have each had a home run so far in the first two games of this series. Plus the fact that yesterday the bottom of the lineup, which was, I mean, a worrying sign for to say the least for the Yankees heading into the postseason. We were not as confident, I think you and I, at some of the at bats that were taking place for the bottom of the lineup. I mean, every guy from 6 through 9 had a hit yesterday. A couple of them with Volpe and Rizzo had two hits. Just the ability to bring in runs as well. The RBIs are there, and yeah, it some of them came on errors, like we said. But I mean, that Rizzo big hit, that was a double for him. Yes, Volpe scored on an error. When you look at it in the end, like they're scoring really important runs, but they're also moving the line and allowing for that top of the lineup to get a shot with runners on base. And that's been absolutely huge, I think, in these first two games.
Yeah, absolutely. The bottom of the order production yesterday between the trio of Volpe, Rizzo, and Verdugo was outstanding yesterday. But I want to bring up Gleyber Torres. I mean, what else can you say about Gleyber Torres? Another 3-hit game yesterday night, and he really seems to shine brightest when the stage is the biggest. And Gleyber Torres has really performed well in the playoffs throughout his entire Yankee tenure. But just another great game for Gleyber yesterday, and he's really been doing his job and setting the table. I mean, even though Aaron Judge and has struggled a little bit to start the postseason. Finally got the home run yesterday. Maybe that'll get him going, and maybe that'll be the beginning of him breaking out. But between Judge and Wells, the two of them have been really struggling. Wells has struggled mightily. Another hitless 0 for 4 night yesterday night. But Gleyber Torres has been doing his job at the top of the order, setting the table for the big guys below him. So you can only hope with Gleyber Torres getting on base at the clip that he's been getting on base, and obviously Juan Soto is Juan Soto. He's going to always be doing his thing, that eventually Judge and Wells are going to start cashing in on these opportunities with guys on base every single time they're up, seemingly, and they'll start getting going and driving in these runs. But Gleyber Torres has been excellent. And then another thing that I want to touch on, obviously a lot has happened since then. Almost a game and a half has occurred since then, but we have to talk about Carlos Rodon and the excellent performance that he had in game one. I mean, 6 dominant innings, only the solo home run. He gave up 9 strikeouts. I mean, he was magnificent. And this is why the Yankees got him, to be that co-ace alongside Garrett Cole. And they kind of switched roles in this series, right? Cole didn't have his best stuff yesterday, gutted it out. The Yankees won anyway, but Carlos Rodon was that guy in game one. And he did everything and more that the Yankees could have possibly wanted and asked for out of him. Really set the tone for the series. 6 dominant innings to get the Yankees started on the right foot at home to begin this championship series.
Yeah, he really silenced a lot of doubters, obviously, with his game two performance in the previous series, getting back on the right end of things, and what a performance it was for Rodon the other day. Josh, let's bring it to tomorrow night now, as the Yankees sit pretty with a 2-0 lead. However, this series is far from over, as the Yankees have to travel for 3 games in Cleveland, 2 of them, and then 3 if necessary, if they get to a game 5. But let's start off with Game 3 tomorrow night at 5:08 in Cleveland. The pitching matchup still up for debate. However, the Yankees have decided that Clark Schmidt is on the mound, and he will be their starter for Game 3. Obviously, a really good performance that he had in Kansas City in the previous series, so something to get on the back of for Clark Schmidt there. And then on the other end, we have the glorious TBD for Cleveland right now as we sit here on Wednesday morning, Josh. So when you look at it, it may end up being a bullpen game for Cleveland. Obviously, they used two starters yesterday and the day before with Cobb and Bybee. And obviously, Bybee being their number one, they may go for a bullpen game. They may not. We'll kind of see how it goes. But if you're the Yankees, it's kind of just pick up where you left off with in New York, as well as pick up where you left off on the road in Kansas City. Just do the same in Cleveland, where I mean the Yankees in recent postseason history have had Cleveland's number in Cleveland.
Right. I mean, obviously the Yankees did the job at home, right? They did what they were supposed to do. They took care of business. Now they're up 2-0, but the Yankees have actually been a better road team all year than they played at Yankee Stadium. So maybe being on the road is kind of more like home cooking for the Yankees. They struggled in that second game at home against Kansas City, and then were able to go to Kansas City, win those last two games, and take care of Kansas City on the road. So the Yankees have been a better road team than home team all year long. So you have to go into this part of the series going into Cleveland with the exact same mindset. They took care of business at home and keep it rolling, right? And you feel good with your position, right? You took care of games 1 and 2. Clark Schmidt on the mound has been throwing the ball really well ever since he came back from that injury where he was out an extended period of time. Obviously, the numbers are going to look like all right, right? He went 4 2/3, 2 runs, but that doesn't indicate how well Clark Schmidt was throwing the ball. He went 4 2/3 shutout innings and just couldn't finish that fifth inning. All of a sudden, allowed a couple hits and a couple runs scored, so the outing didn't look as quite as good as it was. But Clark Schmidt really did throw the ball extremely well, and pitched really well in his lone postseason start in that game 3 in Kansas City, a game that the Yankees eventually won on that Giancarlo Stanton go-ahead eventual game-winning home run in the 8th inning of that game. But if you're the Yankees, you feel really good about your position right now. Clark Schmidt's been throwing the ball really well, and you know that Clark Schmidt's going to always gut it out, grind it out, and keep you in the game. I mean, Clark Schmidt, I feel like you could always count on him, and it's almost a sure guarantee that he's going to give you, anywhere from 4 to 6 innings and keep you in the game by allowing 2 or 3 or 2 runs or less. Even when Clark Schmidt doesn't have his best stuff, I feel like I said this the last time because the last time we were on the show, that was going into the game 3 before Clark Schmidt had pitched. But Clark Schmidt will always find a way to grind it out and keep you in the game. And that's exactly what the Yankees need in Cleveland. Even if he doesn't come out there and he's not guns blazing with his best stuff, you know that he's going to grind it out, keep you in the game, and give the offense a chance to win. And that's exactly what I expect him to do in a pivotal game 3 and a game that Cleveland really needs to get back into the series.
Yeah, and for this game, I think when you look at Cleveland and what they've been able to do at home this year, it's a huge game for the New York Yankees. Cleveland top 3 in their home winning percentage so far this season. So a bit different from the Yankees, who have been really good on the road. That should be a good battle, though, as the Yankees head on the road for this one. In the end, I think it's just how the Yankees are able to limit this lineup, a lineup that's kind of struggled through 2 games in Cleveland, but you have guys there in Steven Kwan, Jose Ramirez, who are just bound to get going at some point. I think the Yankees, their goal heading to Cleveland is limit that. And if they can't limit that, then that's the time where their offense has to wake up, Josh.
Right. I mean, for as bad as the Yankees have been with cashing in with their opportunities and hitting with runners in scoring position, they've gotten extremely fortunate that Cleveland's been just as bad, if not worse. Stephen Kwan and Josh Naylor have both been great, but other than that, they really haven't gotten any production from pretty much anybody else in that lineup. And really, Jose Ramirez yesterday came up a couple times, I think once with the bases loaded and another time with a couple guys on, and he hasn't been able to cash in. So if Cleveland has any chance to get back in the series and take a game, they're going to need Jose Ramirez to get going. Yes, he ended up hitting that home run in the 9th inning yesterday to kind of give Cleveland a little bit of hope and make the game a little bit more interesting. That made the score 6-3, which is the eventual final score that the Yankees went on to win by. But if you're a Cleveland Guardians fan and you're Jose Ramirez, you need to cash in on those big opportunities. And when you get runners on base for Jose Ramirez, you need him to come through in those big spots. And just a solo home run in the 9th inning when your team is already down 4 isn't going to cut it. So look for Jose Ramirez to get going. Stephen Kwan is obviously Stephen Kwan. He's an impossible guy to get out. I believe he has an active 12 or 13 game postseason hitting streak that dates back to a couple of years ago as well. So Kwan will always hit, and Josh Naylor has had the Yankees number throughout his entire career and has played really well thus far in the championship series. He had a couple hits last night against Garrett Cole, who who he continues to see the ball really well against. So obviously you have those two guys, but it's going to take more than those two guys for Cleveland's offense to get going and for them to climb back into the series. And the key guy that starts with is their MVP for the last almost a decade now. It's amazing how long he's been around, but Jose Ramirez has been a really good player since he came up in 2016, and he's really the lone holdover from that Cleveland team that made it to the World Series that year in 2016 and almost won the whole thing. So look for Jose Ramirez to get going, and if Cleveland has any chance of getting back in the series, they're going to need Jose Ramirez to step up.
Yeah, 100%. So it's the Yankees heading on the road now with a 2-0 series lead. Game 3 takes place tomorrow, 5:08 p.m. It's Schmidt versus an undecided pitcher for Cleveland. We'll see who that is and if the Yankees can grab some wins on the road now, as they're just 2 wins away from an AL pennant. But we do have to bring things to the other side, and it's the New York Mets, who sit in a 1-1 series tie, and they'd probably be very happy about that if you ask them. A throwaway game in the end in game 1, a 9-0 loss, into a 7-3 win for the Mets in game 2, where the bats just came out hot early and really got onto this Dodger pitching staff. And I talked about it on Monday, how great the Dodgers pitching has been, and the scoreless inning streak that they were on. And the Mets and Francisco Lindor said, nope, not anymore. They are done right where they stand. And obviously the leadoff homer in the first inning for Francisco Lindor. And this was a bullpen game in the end for the Dodgers. And I think when you look at some teams, like for example Cleveland, you say, all right, a bullpen game, that's pretty worrying for the opponent. Cleveland's bullpen's really good. When you look at the Dodgers, I don't know how much you worry right now based on how many injuries there are and just everything that's going on with the Dodgers pitching overall. You're not really too worried about a bullpen game, and boy, the Mets were not. They absolutely trounced this Dodgers team, and yes, it was high scoring early, and it slowed down towards the end, but just a huge 7-3 win on the road, and now they bring it back to New York, and they have home field advantage for the next 3 games.
Right. I mean, a bit of an interesting decision by the Dodgers to utilize a bullpen game here. Obviously, we know, I mean, it's been well documented that the Dodgers are absolutely decimated with injuries in their pitching staff, missing Clayton Kershaw, missing Tyler Glasnow, who was their prized trade acquisition in the offseason and was pitching really well, was an all-star this year until he got hurt, and he's lost for the season. But the Dodgers essentially are working with 3 starters right now, and really 2.5 when you think about it, because obviously you have Jack Flaherty and Walker Buehler, and then kind of half of Yoshinobu Yamamoto, because he's coming off an injury and the Dodgers are being really careful with him and they don't want to push him too hard. So they're really working with 2.5 starters here. A bit of an interesting decision to go with a bullpen game in game 2 when you could have went with Buehler on full rest. But I guess the Dodgers did have the luxury of being up 1-0, so they wanted to see if they could steal a game with the bullpen before going to Buehler than Yamamoto for games 3 and 4. But you could have went Buehler full rest in game 2 to really take a stranglehold of the series, decided not to do it, and the Mets took advantage. I mean, right off the bat to set the tone, Lindor, leadoff home run. And then we talked about the Yankees kind of, they're finding ways to win games, but they're kind of unable to get that knockout punch. Well, the Mets got that knockout punch with a Mark Vientos grand slam early in the game as well. And even though the Dodgers were able to kind of scratch across a couple runs, make it interesting there in a couple of situations, if Kike Hernandez comes through a couple of times with runners in scoring position, maybe we're talking about a whole different game. But the Mets and their ability to add on and get that big knockout punch and go up 6-0 early really put this game away and didn't give the Dodgers much of a chance. Even when the Dodgers made it a little bit of interesting, the Mets having that cushion proved to pay big dividends on the heels of that Vientos grand slam. And then on the pitching side of things, I mean, what more can you say about Sean Manaea, who's just been absolutely outstanding for the Mets in the postseason? I mean, when the Mets need a big win, need a big time performance, need somebody to kind of set the tone and give them a big time performance in kind of a must win game, count on Sean Manaea. I mean, he's been absolutely brilliant. Had that gem against the Phillies. This time he was great against the Dodgers as well. 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs. Really, he went 5 close to perfect innings and then got into a little bit of trouble in the 6th before the Mets were able to limit the damage and get out of trouble. But Manaea was excellent. Again, the bullpen did the job. Edwin Diaz made it a little interesting there, like he likes to do typically in the 9th, but ultimately was able to shut the door on a Mets 7-3 win. And that's what you want to do as a road team, right? The Mets did their job. They split on the road, and now in a 1-1 series tie, the series shifts back to Queens in what should be an incredible and raucous environment in New York.
Yeah, and Josh, we sat here 1 week ago talking about the same Sean Manaea and just a vintage performance in game three against the Phillies at home, and then now game two on the road. And it I don't think it was like his best stuff, but it's still the stat line looked perfect. It really, really did. It wasn't the 7 innings strong that we saw a week ago, but 5 innings, 2 hits allowed, 2 earned runs, 4 walks, and 7 strikeouts. He still had a ton of strikeouts, still got 5 innings in there, and the 2 runs came on 2 hits, and that was it. Of course, the 4 walks he'll cut those down once he pitches again. But like when you look at it, that's exactly what this Mets lineup needs. They just need a pitcher who doesn't give up too much and gives them room to really do their thing. And they definitely did that. Obviously, you mentioned the Vientos Grand Slam, how great he's been so far this postseason. What a huge player he's been for the Mets so far, and a 378 batting average in the postseason for young Mark Vientos. What a performer he's been. Josh, let's bring it to tonight now. As the Mets go back home, they're in Queens, an 8:08 start. It's just Mets Dodgers tonight. No Yankees Guardians, obviously the day off. So the focus is on the NLCS in game three. Bueller against Severino on the mound. And when you look at it, Bueller got beat up against San Diego. So a start that he's going to want to forget. And Severino, on the other hand, has pitched twice and looked pretty good both times in the end. And a pitcher who we've kind of seen the ups and downs of in recent history. He's looked really strong, and now he comes back home. A lot of confidence for this Mets team tonight as they host the Dodgers.
Right, right. If you're the Mets, you're feeling really good right now. You did your job, you split on the road, and now you're coming back home with Luis Severino, who's been really reliable for you guys all year long. The Mets could have went with Quintana here in game three, who's been outstanding in this postseason run as well. Him and Manaea have been, it's crazy to say, Severino's been pretty good this postseason, but he's actually been the Mets' third best starter because that's how good both Manaea and Quintana have been. But ultimately, the Mets elect to go with Severino, probably to split up the two lefties, go lefty, then righty, then lefty again in game four. But if you're the Mets, you feel really good right now. You split. You got Severino going on the mound. Walker Buehler, who's not the pitcher that he once was. I mean, there was a point in time young in his young career where Walker Buehler looked like he was going to be one of the great pitchers of this generation. Injuries have kind of caught up with him. He's finally back and healthy now after missing a couple years due to Tommy John, and you hope that he can get back to the level that he once was at between 2018, 2019, 2020, around that time. But he's just not that same pitcher. Obviously, the stat line isn't going to look pretty from his lone postseason start in game three of the division series against the Padres, but ultimately all 6 of the runs that he gave up were in 1 inning, and he was able to settle down. And other than that, if you take away that one big inning where the Padres scored 6 on him, he really won 4 shutout innings. So if you take those positives and you take out that 1 inning, Buehler actually did look pretty solid in that postseason start against San Diego in game three, was able to keep the Dodgers in the game, a game that the Dodgers eventually lost. But due to Buehler being able to gut out 5 innings of work and keep and hold the Padres at bay after that rough inning, the Dodgers were able to climb back into it, make a game out of it, and they lost a close one. They lost that game 6-5. That was game three. Obviously, the Dodgers would go on to win the next 2 games to move on to the championship series. But Buehler, with that performance, kind of saved the bullpen a little bit, and by holding the Padres to those 6 runs, that began the scoreless streak where the Padres weren't able to recover and weren't able to score another run for the rest of the series. So in a way, Buehler really did contribute to the Dodgers being here in this moment, getting through the San Diego series, and he started that Dodgers scoreless streak that carried into game 2 of the championship series. But if you're Walker Buehler, you want to kind of forget about that 1 inning and kind of, and for both of these pitchers, really, Buehler and Severino kind of turn back the clock, right? These were 2 of the bright young pitchers that looked like were destined for superstardom around the time of 2017, 2018, 2019. And both of these pitchers have kind of followed similar career paths, right? Kind of flame-throwing power righty pitchers where injuries kind of caught up to them, and they've lost several seasons due to injury and haven't been able to kind of recover and return back to that, at one point, Cy Young form that they were once at. So really interesting pitching matchup when you think about it like that between Buehler and Severino, a couple of guys that looked like were going to be some of the pitchers of this generation. Hasn't panned out that way, but now here they are in a pivotal game three, matched up against each other, and it'll be really interesting to see who rises up to the occasion and who puts their team on the back and can deliver a big-time performance in a pivotal game three. And we know that in game threes of series that are tied 1-1, the team that wins that series more often than not goes on to win the series. So huge decisive game 3 right here coming up in Queens tonight.
Yeah, huge one, and it's going to depend on the big hits and the big moments, and of course, the Mets have done that so far, but so have the Dodgers. They got a lot of guys who've stepped up in big moments so far this postseason. But we'll look ahead to tonight, Game 3, NLCS. It's the Mets, it's the Dodgers. Series tied 1-1 in 8:08 start tonight. Buehler on the mound for the Dodgers, Severino on the mound for the Mets. Taking place tonight, 8:08 at Citi Field. And let's take things to the NFL as the New York Jets made some shocking news yesterday as they traded for Davante Adams from the Las Vegas Raiders. Adams, obviously, his long relationship with Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers, heads to New York, and the Jets ended up trading a conditional third-round pick to the Raiders. Adams must be a first or second team APL pro. That unlikely to happen as he's missed so many games already, but also if he's on the active roster for an AFC Championship game or Super Bowl, and at that point it would be a huge win for the New York Jets if they made it that far with how they're sitting right now, Josh, at 2-4, and Adams comes in now to this Jets team who's struggling, and we'll get to the Bills loss in just a bit. But obviously a chance to take first place in that division, or at least tie for first place in the division with that loss. Now all of a sudden, Davante Adams is in town. Do you think it takes this Jets team over the top?
I think it definitely can take this Jets team over the top, but obviously the Jets are going to have to show you a lot in order for you to officially say, okay, this is truly a Super Bowl contender now. I mean, you look at just the names on paper, right? And the Jets have all the ingredients to compete with the best teams in the world, the Chiefs of the world, the 49ers of the world, and be right up there amongst the top Super Bowl contenders in the NFL, but we haven't seen it yet. This is still a 2-4 team that has struggled to find ways to win games, and they showed that again on Monday when they had every opportunity to get a big win, jump up to first place in the AFC East, but they just couldn't get it done. Obviously, kicking has been a problem. Zerline's been a problem. And if Zerline makes a couple of makeable kicks, all of a sudden we're talking about maybe a 5-1 or a 4-2 Jets team. But ultimately that didn't happen. And this Jets team is a team that currently, despite all the great names that they have on paper and all the talent they have on the roster, has struggled to find ways to win games. And unfortunately for them, football is not won on paper. Football is won out there on the field. And obviously Davante Adams is going to help that, right? Davante Adams, along with Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard, is probably giving the Jets the best receiving core in the game. But now, if you're Aaron Rodgers and you're the New York Jets, now that you have Davante Adams and you're coming up on a soft spot in the schedule, you're running out of excuses here. There really are no more excuses. Now is the time to put it all together, start playing well, and start turning this season around. And if the Jets are going to start turning this season around, it's going to have to start now. And they really don't have that much more time to waste, because let's just say you need 10 wins, maybe 9 if you get lucky, but let's just say you need 10 wins in order to get into the playoffs. That only gives the Jets about 2 or 3 wins to work with, 2 or 3 losses rather to work with here. So if you're the Jets, you need to start turning the ship around and turning it around fast. Davante Adams, the trade should help. Obviously, him and Rodgers have a great relationship. The Jets will look to integrate Davante Adams into the offense really quickly. He's expected to play this week in Week 7. Obviously, Garrett Wilson finally had his first really good game this past week. This will definitely take a lot of the pressure and the burden and the attention that defenders are putting on him off of him with a guy like Davante Adams playing opposite him. So this should open the field up more for Garrett Wilson. So this might actually elevate his performance a little bit. Breece Hall's coming off his first really, really good game where the Jets were finally able to get him involved in the offense, had well over 150 scrimmage yards, so that's a good sign. So lots of good signs from the Jets, but it seems like we're talking about this every week. Good signs and positive things, but ultimately moral victories should be limited for a team that intends to compete for a Super Bowl, and the real thing that matters is the win-loss column, and the Jets have been in the loss column far too often. So you're seeing a lot of improvements in the roster and from individual players, but ultimately the only thing that matters right now for this Jets team, and if you're a Jets fan, is wins and losses, and the Jets have not been getting wins, but getting Davante Adams should certainly help with that cause. And him and Rodgers obviously have a good rapport, played with each other for forever in Green Bay. But with the trio of weapons, or the quartet of weapons, if you want to include Allen Lazard, but between Garrett Wilson, Davante Adams, and Breece Hall, you've given Aaron Rodgers all the ingredients now to run a top flight offense. And now it's on the Jets. Joe Douglas has put together a hell of a team. So now it's on the Jets and the players on the field to put it together and put some points on the board for a defense that's been pretty solid all year long, but an offense that has struggled to get it going. So the Jets look to finally consistently put points on the board and get this offense going now with the addition of a guy like Davante Adams, who's probably a top 5 receiver in all of football.
Yeah, I was going to say if there wasn't enough pressure already on the Jets and on Aaron Rodgers, now there is enormous pressure on especially Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he came to New York and the Jets have done everything possible to look at Aaron Rodgers and give him exactly what he's asked for the last 2 years. And yes, obviously last year ended in injury, but you look at now this team and it's an Aaron Rodgers team. It really is. It's an Aaron Rodgers team with a really, really good defense that they've already had for years and years and years. So this is completely Rodgers' offense. It comes down to him. I mean, we talk about just the little things in an important game, and obviously it came down to an interception in the end. And I don't feel like enough people are really talking about that too much because he is Aaron Rodgers and what we've seen in his career. Of course, he's going to come in on a float in Canton and just rise into the sunset like in Canton, Ohio. However, he has not played well so far this year. Like that's just a fact. I mean, they had a really good game against New England. Other than that, though, I can't really say that I saw Aaron Rodgers in any of those other games really stand out as the true Aaron Rodgers that we know, the MVP seasons that he's grabbed. And I mean, it just has not been there this year. Now he gets his top weapon from back in Green Bay, a top 5 wide receiver, arguably in the NFL. There's no more excuses. It comes down to him. He needs to play better. He knows he needs to play better, but now he's got every possibility to do so with the weapons that he has. But it comes down to him in the end. He needs to pick his game up. He knows that the team is sitting at 2-4. A lot of the time that goes on the quarterback and the coach. The coach got fired already. Now it's up to the quarterback to really step up his game. And obviously this is a big trade, getting his top guy back in Green Bay and Davante Adams, who year after year, when he was paired with Aaron Rodgers, healthy seasons wise, way over 100 catches in each of those years, way over 1,200 yards in each of those years, 10 plus touchdowns in each of those years. I mean, he had a great couple years in Las Vegas that he's now struggled without a true quarterback, I feel like, right next to him. But now he looks at a fresh start and going back to his buddy and Aaron Rodgers. Josh, let's bring it to this Bills game and just we talked about you talked about the kicking problems that the Jets have. Overall, in this one, like it just came down to not making the most of their opportunities. I feel like we're talking about the Giants here, Josh. Like it's the same thing. You get inside the red zone, you get inside the 10-yard line, slam the ball in the end zone. Nope, we're going to get some penalties. We're not going to make it. We're going to end up kicking field goals. It just came down to that in the end. They get one of those scores when they were inside the 10 and they win this ball game, Josh.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at missed opportunities. I mean, we talked about it with the Yankees. We talk about it with the Giants week to week.
The New York theme.
Right. It seems to be a theme here with our teams here in New York. But you look at it, it's converting and making the most of your opportunities. I mean, obviously, we're maybe talking about a different outcome in multiple games if Greg Zuerlein can make makeable field goals. But at the same time, we're talking about an extremely different outcome in all these games if instead of forcing a field goal opportunity, the Jets are able to keep the drive going and convert in the red zone. And the Jets had several trips to the red zone, all of which it looked like a promising drive, and then the drive would stagnate and they're not able to convert in the red zone. And Aaron Rodgers knows that. He said it yesterday when he was on the Pat McAfee show. We have to make the most of our opportunities as an offense. He said he has to play better. Everybody has to play better. But the biggest thing for the Jets is converting when you're in the red zone and punching it in for 6. And ultimately, 3 points are nice, and the Jets probably have a couple more wins if they get 3 with Greg Zuerlein being able to make field goals. But ultimately, it's more of a sure thing, and they probably have a hell of a lot more wins, and their offense is looking a hell of a lot better if they're able to punch it in the red zone. And the Jets have just not been able to take advantage of those opportunities in the red zone. And Davante Adams should certainly help that because Davante Adams has been a top red zone threat, a top red zone target. And it seemed like the Rodgers to Adams conversion rate in the red zone was near 100% when the two were at their peak in Green Bay. So this should definitely, hopefully, help with the Jets with their their opportunity with their missed opportunity problem and their red zone offense problems that they've had, adding a guy like Davante Adams, who's just a great goal line and red zone threat to help them convert more on these opportunities that they haven't been converting on thus far in this season.
Yeah, Jets with a couple of receivers over 100 yards in this one in Lazard and Wilson. And then Rodgers, like, didn't play bad. 23 of 35, 294, two touchdowns, one interception. The interception was obviously costly on the last drive that the Jets had in this one. But in the end, the story, how well he played in the end, still comes down to they didn't convert in the red zone. And that goes on the quarterback there, and he needs to be better. And he said that. So should be interesting looking at the Jets for the week ahead. But let's change things to the other side of MetLife with the New York Giants, who played the night before at MetLife Stadium on primetime Sunday Night Football. And it just was a frustrating game. If you were a Giant fan, you're coming off last week against Seattle and saying, all right, well, we're feeling good even without Neighbors and Singletary. Like we still look good. The defense looks strong. Just the defense looks strong again. It just came down to the offense all of a sudden this time. The offense just couldn't figure it out. And in the end, they just could not score. And that was the problem for the Giants. They finally got a touchdown in the third quarter with Tyrone Tracy out of the backfield. But Daniel Jones, we went from four good performances, I would say, in a row to this one was a dud. Like it really was in the end. 22 of 41, 205, no touchdowns, an interception. I mean, we saw, I think it was a couple of games ago that it was he had that same kind of stat line without the interception in the end. But like when you look at it, yeah, Daniel Jones was not good enough. The Giants offense overall was not good enough. And in the end, that gave them the loss. But I think the completion percentage stands out in the end, though, Josh. It just did not come together. A lot of targets for Slayton, a lot of targets for Robinson, a lot of misses in the end to his top wide receivers, Josh.
Right, absolutely. I mean, you look at that 22 of 41. I mean, most of the time when you, if you're the Giants and you're Daniel Jones and you're attempting over 40 passes, that usually means that good things aren't happening for your offense and you're playing from behind because the Giants like to run the ball a lot, run with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was the Giants' leading rusher, but ultimately you want to get Tyrone Tracy or Singletary, whoever the lead running back is on that given day, more so involved and not have Daniel Jones throwing 41 times a game because that usually spells bad things. But ultimately for Daniel Jones, what it comes down to, and it's more of the same for the Giants with, a lot of the time their incompetence on offense and not being able to convert and put points on the board when their defense shows out and plays the game that they did, limiting this Joe Burrow-led offense that had been rolling coming into this game. They held them to 17 points. You take that all day, and really it was 10 points. They let up a kind of a garbage time touchdown when the game was essentially over pretty much at the end. The Giants essentially held this high-powered Bengals offense that was on a roll coming into this game to 10 points. You need to win that football game. When the defense performs the way it did and held Joe Burrow in this offense to 10 points, you need to find ways to put points on the board and win this football game. And ultimately what it comes down to for Daniel Jones is poor decision-making. I look back to the first half. The Giants are rolling on this long drive, getting to the red zone, and then Daniel Jones inexplicably throws this Hail Mary wobbly prayer with no Giants in the area. I think I only saw Bengals on the screen. I think there were 4 or 5 Bengals closer to the ball than the nearest New York Giant, and it resulted in a pick. And if you're a Giants fan, you're honestly not surprised because it seems like we've seen that so much from Daniel Jones, where he looks great. He's in this rhythm. He's leading this incredible drive. You're like, okay, Daniel Jones, let's go. Let's convert on this drive. And then all of a sudden a play like that happens, and you're like, am I even surprised anymore? I mean, how many times have we seen the same movie over and over again where he makes a poor decision in the red zone that leads to a pick, and all of a sudden the crowd is deflated, and it's just an absolute backbreaker for your team. And at that point, a drive that the Giants looked to tie the game, and they eventually pulled even, but still weren't able to get the job done. Other than that Tyrone Tracy goal line carry for a touchdown. So for the Giants, it's the same as the Jets, right? Converting in the red zone and putting points on the board. And that's just something that the Giants have struggled to do. And they just can't convert in the red zone. And if you're the Giants and a Giants fan, it's more of the same, right? Convincing win in Cleveland, come back on national television prime time, disappointing, winnable game in which you can't get it done against the Cowboys. And then same exact thing again, convincing, great win on the road against Seattle, come back for a primetime game at MetLife, can't get it done. And the Giants just have not been able to get it done in the bright lights, on the big stage, at MetLife, in prime time. It seems like for forever with Daniel Jones, as he, as Daniel Jones seemingly has surpassed Kirk Cousins as the quarterback that just can't get it done on prime time. But it's this never ending cycle of big win. How are they going to follow it up? Can they back up their big performance? They can't. Then they have another big win and they kind of reel you back in, right? But then another dud and another bad performance. And it's just kind of this never ending roller cycle, a roller coaster. If you're the Giants and a Giants fan, and they just can never seem to find their way and kind of get into that rhythm and stack wins together and back up a good performance with an equally as good performance. And it's kind of one big step forward, two even bigger steps back. So a big time missed opportunity for the Giants in a game that was extremely winnable and was right there in front of them.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, a couple missed field goals for the Giants definitely did not help them. Greg Joseph had some opportunities and make the game a little closer, even tie the game at one point, and it just didn't come together for the Giants. So another problem that New York has to really figure out is their kicking game. Same with the Jets. So I think kicking's just a problem right now at MetLife Stadium. But the Giants fall to 2-4, and you look ahead to this week's matchup. And it just does not get any easier, Josh, as we head into really division play now, and the Giants take on the 3-2 Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles coming off of last week, and for a team that was coming off of a bye, I think that was the least likely performance that you would have seen out of the Eagles. It was shocking how poor it was in the end, and all the headlines right now in Philadelphia, obviously on Nick Sirianni with everything that went on post game and just Eagles fans booing him. I mean, they kind of have to make a statement here. The Eagles do, and if you're the Giants, you just try and stop that. You're on your home field, and we'll see if Neighbors and Singletary are able to come back. That's probably the big story for the Giants in this one. Andrew Thomas is doubtful to come back, so they're going to be without their offensive tackle probably for this one. But in the end, I will say this is a time to take advantage of the Eagles. If you're the Giants, the Eagles have not looked good this year, and yes, they are 3-2 right now. But if you told me in each of those games, I'd pick out points where the Eagles have looked terrible at points in their wins. So obviously there's a couple of losses as well. I think when you look at it though, like I said, this is the time to really get at the Eagles. If you're the Giants, you got to have your guys back healthy though. If Neighbors is in, it makes it a little bit easier for you. Obviously Darius Slay right now questionable for Philadelphia in this one. Overall, Giants at home, just do your business. Sunday, 1 o'clock, you're at home, no prime time, Josh. Just get it done. It's an easier game against this Eagles team.
Finally, I mean, get us off prime time. Clearly, it's not working, right? But ultimately, injuries have kind of started to catch up to the Giants. You mentioned Andrew Thomas. Obviously, Kayvon Thibodeau just placed on IR. He's going to be out an extended period of time. Neighbors has missed the last couple of games. Devin Singletary's kind of been in and out. Tyrone Tracy's been a solid replacement, but obviously you'd like to have Devin Singletary back in there. He's been pretty good for the Giants when he's been in there. But ultimately, these injuries are kind of starting to stack up and pile up for the Giants to these key, important core players, and you need to start getting guys back because if you're a Giants team that's struggling as much as they are, you can't afford any more injuries and to be more decimated than you already are. But you mentioned it. I mean, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago. This was the time to take advantage of the Dallas Cowboys, who had came into the Giants game struggling, and the Giants weren't able to do that. Same exact deal here with the Eagles. The Eagles have not looked good despite their 3-2 record. They have not looked like a good football team. Jalen Hurts has struggled. He really has not been that good this season, and we really haven't seen Jalen Hurts return to his MVP form that we saw a couple years ago. He just has not been the same guy. But same thing as the Cowboy game a couple weeks ago where the Giants weren't able to take advantage. Another opportunity against a division rival in which the Giants have struggled against them in the past and haven't been able to buy a win against the Eagles in several years, it seems like. Can the Giants take advantage of an Eagles team that looks extremely vulnerable right now, has a lot of holes on this team? It doesn't look like they're not really playing well for Coach Nick Sirianni. They're up and down. They barely eked out a win and escaped against Cleveland, a team that they should have absolutely annihilated. This is a team that just made it to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, but this is just not the same Eagles team. Obviously, a lot of a lot of pieces on the defensive side and the offensive line with no more Jason Kelsey. But this is not the same scary Eagles team that we've seen. And this is a team that looks very vulnerable and a team that looks extremely beatable right now. But at the same time, we've talked about the Giants. It seems like more of the same. We talked about this with the Cowboys a couple weeks ago. Can the Giants take advantage of a division rival in which they've struggled against them, but a team that looks extremely beatable right now at home, off prime time finally? I mean, if there's a time to get, we said this about the Cowboys a couple weeks ago, but if there's a time to get to the Eagles, it seems like the time is now. But obviously, the big story here is going to be Saquon Barkley's return back to MetLife Stadium. And how's that reception going to be? And how's he going to handle his return to the Giants? Is he going to pop off? Is he going to really shove it to the Giants and really show them what they're missing? I mean, as a Giants fan, I'm scared that he's going to have this absolutely monstrous 200-plus yard, 3-plus touchdown game. And I'm not looking forward to it. But obviously, the fans are going to get on him a little bit. He's not going to get all that warm of a reception given how things ended and given the fact that he signed on to one of, if not the Giants' biggest division rivals. So that is not going to be well received amongst the MetLife crowd. But if you're the Giants, bounce back. I mean, we've seen them bounce back twice now after tough losses with a couple of big wins. And can they make this a signature when they're still looking to get on the board at home? The Giants are 2-4. Their 2 big wins have been on the road. They're still looking to get that first home win at MetLife Stadium and give these MetLife fans something to cheer about, because it's something they haven't been able to do all year. But if there's a time to get to the Eagles when things are kind of looking discombobulated and things are kind of off the rails a little bit despite their 3-2 record, it seems like the time is now to get them.
Yeah, and the Eagles coming in as 3-point favorites in this one, total sitting at 42.5. And yeah, Josh, with the Jets playing Sunday night, I will have my popcorn out and I'll be watching to see what's going on. Saquon returns to MetLife and should not get the warmest reception in the end, obviously for the reasons that you stated, but it should be an interesting one. And the Giants, it's time for them to really make a statement in this one. Coming off the loss last week, could they bounce back once again with a win? I mean, time will tell. We'll see what happens as the Eagles travel to MetLife to take on the Giants. Eagles at 3-2, Giants at 2-4. Big game for the Giants at MetLife Stadium this weekend. And let's finish things off today, Josh, with a Thursday night football preview as we look at a bit of a snooze fest, I would say, of a Thursday night. We've been pretty good in recent years about the games that have gone on Thursday. This one might be one to forget or just watch the baseball games. It is the 3-3 Broncos against the 2-4 Saints. Obviously, the big story heading into this one is the return of Sean Payton back down to New Orleans. And the other big story is that Derek Carr, doubtful for this one. It's probably going to be another Spencer Rattler game. So the battle of the rookie quarterbacks here. Bo Nix taking on Spencer Rattler. It's going to be in the end. And you look at it, Denver comes in with Spencer Rattler at quarterback for New Orleans. Denver coming in as 2.5-point favorites. Total sitting at 37.5. And if a total does not tell you the story of what this game will probably be, I don't know what will. But we wait to be surprised here, Josh. But overall, looking at this game, young quarterbacks, really solid defenses in the end, and a New Orleans team that, I mean, if you said 3 weeks ago that they're all of a sudden sitting at 2-4 and just begging for a win, we'd be like, really? Wow, this team was really good to start the season, Josh.
Right. New Orleans obviously got off to that insane start, have struggled lately. A tough loss this past week against a Bucs team that really is playing extremely good football right now, but they allowed 51 points to a high-powered Bucs offense, but still 51 points to anybody in this league is unacceptable. But if you're New Orleans, you just give up 51 points, but you did pick off Baker Mayfield 3 times, so I do expect them to make a lot of adjustments on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, they're facing a Broncos defense that is not nearly as high-powered of an offense as the Bucs team that they just had to go up against. So lots of adjustments coming from the Saints, but obviously no Derek Carr is the big story here. It's going to be another game with Spencer Rattler, and Rattler wasn't awful. Rattler wasn't terrible in his NFL debut, but still more to be desired, obviously, as a rookie quarterback who's coming in kind of thrown into the fire, into a tough situation, in an unexpected situation with the Derek Carr injury. But certainly not the marquee Thursday night football matchup that we've been given the last couple weeks or so. But an interesting matchup to say the least. You mentioned it, Sean Payton making his long-awaited return back to New Orleans, where he coached all those years, won a Super Bowl with them, and the Broncos. I mean, they found a way to win a couple of football games here, and all of a sudden find themselves in 3-3. And if they could get a win here today, or get a win here Thursday night, all of a sudden you look at this Broncos team that doesn't really look all that good on paper, and all of a sudden they're close to playoff positioning. So a rather interesting matchup here with the Broncos looking to fight for playoff positioning early in the season for a team that wasn't expected to contend, and the Saints obviously got off to that insane 2-0 start, destroyed the Cowboys. The Saints looked like a playoff team and maybe even contenders in the NFC before the wheels have kind of fallen off here, and they look to get back on track in a winnable game here at home. So not the most marquee matchup here, but an interesting matchup with some storylines and two teams with things to prove here.
Yeah, obviously a lot of questionable tags right now as well for both of these teams. Pat Surtain, the top corner and maybe football so far this season, he's been really, really strong. He's questionable for this one. And then on the other side, you got New Orleans, who have almost everybody questionable, everybody on offense. Kamara, Taysom Hill, then you got Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave. All of those guys are questionable. We'll see if they end up playing. Most likely, a lot of them will, but maybe a couple of surprise inactives. We'll see. But in the end, Josh, I'm going to take the Broncos because I just can't find a way to take the Saints right now. They're going with a backup quarterback right now in Spencer Rattler, and they got absolutely trucked last week at home. How can I expect a bounce back? And that may be the perfect spot for a bounce back, but not in my mind. I'm going to take the Denver Broncos. I think the Broncos defense has been really strong. I think their ability to involve Javonte Williams in the run game and take the pressure off Bo Nix recently has helped them. And yeah, they're coming off a loss at home to the Chargers, but in the end, I just have way more confidence in the Broncos than I do in the New Orleans Saints. I don't know how I'm saying that in week 7 now.
I'm going to go against you, Malman. I'm going to go with the Saints to take this one at home. I know you got a rookie quarterback. I know you have Spencer Rattler, but this is an offense that didn't look terrible last week. They still put up 27 points, and most of the time when you put up 27 points, that'll be enough for you to win. Obviously, it's not going to be enough for you to win when you give up 51 in return, but they picked off Baker Mayfield 3 times. The Bucs offense is really good. The Saints, they're going to be going to the drawing board, and they're going to be coming up with defensive adjustments. And you know that the defenders are going to be hungry and angry after giving up 51 points. So I think that the Saints are going to make the defensive adjustments against a team that's not nearly as good on offense as the Bucs were in the Denver Broncos. So I think the Saints, after a bad defensive performance where they allowed 50 on them, they make the defensive adjustments necessary. They're at home again. The offense didn't look awful with Spencer Rattler. Obviously, you have Alvin Kamara, one of the best running backs in the league. Obviously, a big question mark is Chris Olave. Left the last game with an injury. Will he be back? But regardless of the injury to Olave and the status of him and Rashid Shaheed, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the New Orleans Saints bounce back, finally buy a win at home after losing their last 4 games, get back on track, get a big-time win on Thursday Night Football to get their season maybe back on the rails a little bit and get themselves back in the wild card mix. And I'm gonna go with the Saints to win and the under. I don't think that they're gonna be a crazy amount of points scored in this game. I think it's gonna be mainly a defensive battle. So I got the Saints to win this game as underdogs at home on Thursday Night Football and the under to hit.
100% agree with you. I'm going with the under. I just think it in the end it's going to be one of those field goal type games. You get like a 16-13 win for either team, and comes down to who could hit the game winner as the clocks hit 0. So should be an interesting one in the end. And the Broncos 3-3 taking on the 2-4 Saints Thursday Night Football this week. But Josh, thanks for coming on again today. Best time of the year as we say it every week, and we're in a good swing right now. But looking forward to more MLB playoffs. Obviously, the big story tonight with the Mets, and then the Yankees take place tomorrow in Cleveland.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Malaman. What a time as a sports fan and a New York sports fan. And who knows, when I speak to you next week, are we going to be talking about a Subway Series? Perhaps a lot could be happening between now and and when we speak next. But as always, man, thanks for having me on. Love it every week.
Of course. And that'll do it for episode 11 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. From Josh Mallett, I've been Zach Malamud. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Friday.